At my brother's engagement party, I was 8 months pregnant. My father suddenly grabbed a heavy tripod and hit me in front of everyone. I collapsed on the floor, bleeding, in shock, and then it happened, my water broke. But what shocked me more was my own family's reaction. They didn't help me. They tried to hide it. My brother even stole my car keys while I was dying on the floor. But then, the doors exploded open. My husband walked in with police and paramedics, and everything changed forever, because the entire room was being recorded. At my brother's engagement party, I thought I was just another guest in a crowded hall full of fake smiles, expensive dresses, and forced laughter. The kind of night where families pretend to love each other for the sake of reputation, where cameras flash more than emotions, and where everyone is too busy performing happiness to notice who is silently breaking inside. I was 8 months pregnant, exhausted beyond words, my body heavy and aching with every step I took across the polished marble floor. My doctor had warned me to rest, but I came anyway. I told myself it was important to show up, to be present for my brother, to not give them another reason to call me selfish or distant. I should have known better. I should have listened to the unease in my chest the moment I walked into that hall and saw how my family looked at me, not with love, but with calculation, as if I was something they were tolerating rather than someone they cared about. The music was loud, laughter echoing from every corner, glasses clinking like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. My mother was busy talking to the groom's family, pretending we were some perfect, respectable household. My father stood near the stage, smiling too confidently, that same dangerous calm he always wore before something terrible happened. My brother was surrounded by guests, enjoying his moment of attention, completely unaware of the storm that had been brewing in our family for years. Years of neglect, control, manipulation, and silent cruelty that I had swallowed just to keep peace. I stood there holding my lower back, trying to ignore the sharp pain in my stomach, telling myself I just needed a few minutes before I could leave. I had no idea that I wouldn't be walking out of that hall the same person I walked in as. I saw him first, my father moving toward the center of the hall, his expression shifting in a way I had seen only a few times before. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something darker, something unstable, something that made people unconsciously step back without knowing why. I felt my heart tighten, a warning flashing inside me, but before I could even process it, voices around me started changing tone. My brother was laughing loudly with his friends, completely unaware that my father was now standing just a few steps away from me. I tried to speak, to ask what was wrong, but the words never came out fully. Then everything happened too fast. A heavy tripod, used by the event videographer, was suddenly in my father's hands. I didn't even understand what was happening until I saw him lift it. The sound of metal scraping against the floor echoed sharply, cutting through the music like a knife. People turned, confused at first, thinking it was some kind of joke or accident. But I knew. I knew from the look in his eyes that this wasn't confusion. This was intention. I barely had time to react before he swung it. The impact was immediate and devastating. A violent shock exploded across the side of my head, sending a blinding wave of pain through my entire body. My vision fractured instantly, lights breaking apart into dark spots. I stumbled backward, my legs refusing to hold me, my hands reaching out instinctively for something that wasn't there. The world tilted violently as I tried to breathe, but the air felt too heavy, too distant. Somewhere in the chaos, I felt my body crash forward, my pregnant stomach hitting the edge of a nearby table with a force that stole every sound from my throat. And then it happened. A sharp, unbearable pain tore through my lower body, unlike anything I had ever felt before. My breath stopped completely. My knees gave out. I fell to the floor, but I barely registered the impact because my entire focus had shifted inward. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I tried to speak, but instead of words, a broken scream escaped me. Warm liquid spread beneath me, and in that horrifying second of realization, I understood what was happening. My water broke. The hall, which was full of music and celebration just seconds ago, began to feel distant, faint, like I was sinking underwater while everyone else stayed on the surface of a different world. I could hear voices rising, confusion spreading, footsteps rushing toward me, but none of it felt real. My hands trembled as I clutched my stomach, trying to protect my unborn child, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding inside my own body. Blood dripped from the cut on my forehead, mixing with tears I didn't even realize I was crying. And then I looked up. What I saw in that moment didn't just break me, it erased something inside me completely. My own family stood there frozen, not in shock, not in concern, but in calculation. My mother's eyes darted between me and the guests, her expression not one of fear for me, but fear of embarrassment. My father stood a few feet away, breathing heavily, still holding the tripod like it meant nothing. My brother didn't move toward me at all. Instead, he looked around the hall as if trying to figure out how to save face in front of everyone watching. No one came to help me. Not a single person. And in that silence, something inside me changed. The pain was still there, the fear still real, but underneath it all, something colder began to rise. Because in that moment, I understood something I had refused to accept my entire life. I was not part of their family in the way I believed. I was useful to them only when I served a purpose. And now, bleeding on the floor, pregnant and broken, I had become an inconvenience they wished they could erase. My breathing became shallow, but my thoughts became sharp. Clear. Focused. I looked down at my trembling hands and then back at the people who shared my blood. And I made a silent promise, not just for myself, but for the child I was carrying. I would survive this. I would not let this be the end of my story. And when I got out of this hall, when I left this moment behind, nothing would ever be the same again. The pain was unbearable, but what hurt more than anything was the silence of the people around me. I was still lying on the cold floor of the event hall, my body shaking uncontrollably, blood and tears mixing together, while strangers pretended not to see me. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear whispers spreading through the crowd, but no one stepped forward to help. It felt like I had become invisible in the very place I was supposed to belong. I tried to lift my head, but everything spun violently. My vision blurred in and out like a broken film reel. My hands instinctively stayed on my stomach, holding my unborn child as if I could somehow protect her from everything happening around us. The contractions were starting now, slow at first, then sharper, deeper, like waves crashing through my body with no mercy. I bit my lips so hard I could taste blood, trying not to scream again. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me completely broken. That's when I saw movement. My cousin, Rachel, pushed through the crowd. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with panic, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. For a second, she just froze, staring at me like the reality of the situation had hit her too hard to process. Then she dropped to her knees beside me. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice trembling. They did this to you." Before I could answer, she grabbed her phone with shaking hands. I heard her breathing change as she made a call, her voice breaking as she spoke. "Ethan, you need to come here right now. Please, it's urgent. They're hurting her. She's bleeding. She's in labor." Those words felt like a distant echo, but they also sparked something inside me. Ethan, my husband, the only person in this world who ever made me feel safe. My vision blurred again, but this time it wasn't just from pain, it was from relief. If he came, everything would change. I just needed to hold on a little longer, but holding on was getting harder. The contractions intensified, ripping through my body like fire. I screamed this time, unable to control it. My fingers dug into the floor as I tried to stay conscious. The world around me felt like it was collapsing inward, sounds stretching and distorting. And still, my family stood at a distance, arguing, panicking, not about me, but about how this would look. Then suddenly, the sound of glass doors bursting open cut through everything. A wave of silence swept across the hall. Footsteps. Fast, heavy, controlled rage. I turned my head slowly, forcing my eyes to focus through the blur. And then I saw him. Ethan. He didn't walk in like a normal person. He stormed in like a force of nature. His face was pale with shock, but his eyes were burning with something dangerous. Behind him were police officers and paramedics rushing in, scanning the scene immediately. For a second, everything stopped. Ethan's eyes found me on the floor, and whatever he saw there broke something inside him. He ran. He didn't care about anyone else in that room. He pushed past guests, shoved chairs out of the way, dropped to his knees beside me instantly. His hands were shaking as he touched my face, his voice cracking for the first time. "Deborah, oh my God, what did they do to you?" I tried to speak, but my voice broke into a weak cry instead. He immediately took off his jacket and pressed it gently against my bleeding forehead, trying to stop the blood while his other hand stayed firmly on my shoulder. "I've got you," he kept saying. "You're safe now. I'm here. Stay with me." The paramedics surrounded us quickly, checking my pulse, my breathing, my condition. One of them immediately signaled urgency. I heard words like trauma, labor complications, head injury, but they sounded far away, like I was underwater again. Then came the voices of my family. My father stepped forward first, trying to control the situation. "It was an accident," he said firmly. "She slipped. She fell. She's exaggerating everything." My mother quickly nodded in agreement, trying to pull attention away from me, whispering to guests not to panic. My brother stood behind them, silent but tense, watching Ethan carefully. But Ethan didn't move. He slowly stood up, still shaking, still holding something inside him that looked like it was about to explode. He turned toward my father, and the entire room went silent again. "You did this," Ethan said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. My father tried to speak again, but Ethan stepped forward, his voice dropping lower. "There are cameras in this hall." That single sentence changed the atmosphere instantly. Ethan pointed toward the ceiling. "This entire place is recorded, every second, every angle." A wave of panic spread through the room. My father's expression shifted for the first time, just slightly but enough to notice. My brother looked away immediately. My mother froze. Ethan continued, his voice steady now, controlled but deadly. "And whatever story you think you're going to tell is already over." Police officers moved in closer. Paramedics lifted me carefully onto a stretcher. As they raised me, I saw Ethan walking beside me, holding my hand tightly, refusing to let go even for a second. My breathing was uneven, my body weak, but for the first time that night, I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. As the doors of the ambulance closed, I saw my family still standing in the hall. Frozen. I tried to speak, but my voice broke into a weak cry instead. He immediately took off his jacket and pressed it gently against my bleeding forehead, trying to stop the blood while his other hand stayed firmly on my shoulder. "I've got you," he kept saying. "You're safe now. I'm here. Stay with me." The paramedics surrounded us quickly, checking my pulse, my breathing, my condition. One of them immediately signaled urgency. I heard words like trauma, labor complications, head injury, but they sounded far away, like I was underwater again. Then came the voices of my family. My father stepped forward first, trying to control the situation. "It was an accident," he said firmly. "She slipped. She fell. She's exaggerating everything." My mother quickly nodded in agreement, trying to pull attention away from me, whispering to guests not to panic. My brother stood behind them, silent but tense, watching Ethan carefully. But Ethan didn't move. He slowly stood up, still shaking, still holding something inside him that looked like it was about to explode. He turned toward my father, and the entire room went silent again. "You did this," Ethan said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. My father tried to speak again, but Ethan stepped forward, his voice dropping lower. "There are cameras in this hall." That single sentence changed the atmosphere instantly. Ethan pointed toward the ceiling. "This entire place is recorded, every second, every angle." A wave of panic spread through the room. My father's expression shifted for the first time, just slightly but enough to notice. My brother looked away immediately. My mother froze. Ethan continued, his voice steady now, controlled but deadly. "And whatever story you think you're going to tell is already over." Police officers moved in closer. Paramedics lifted me carefully onto a stretcher. As they raised me, I saw Ethan walking beside me, holding my hand tightly, refusing to let go even for a second. My breathing was uneven, my body weak, but for the first time that night, I felt like because they cared, but because they finally understood. Everything was about to fall apart. The ambulance doors shut with a heavy metallic sound, cutting off the chaos of the event hall behind me. Inside, everything felt smaller but louder at the same time. The beeping monitors, the urgent instructions from the paramedics, Ethan's hand still locked tightly around mine. I could barely keep my eyes open, but I refused to let go of reality. Every breath felt like a battle. Every contraction reminded me that life was still fighting to continue inside me, even as my own body was breaking apart. Ethan stayed close the entire time, his forehead pressed against mine for a moment as the ambulance rushed through the streets. His voice kept repeating the same thing, like a promise he was forcing Zero the universe to accept. "You're going to be okay. You and our baby are going to be okay." I wanted to believe him. I really did. Back at the event hall, everything had already changed. The police had secured the entire venue. Guests were questioned one by one. The videographer was pulled aside, shaking as he explained what he saw. And then the security system was accessed. CCTV footage, clear, undeniable, unfiltered. Every second of what happened was there. My father picking up the heavy tripod, the moment he swung it, the impact, my collapse, the exact moment I hit the table, my water breaking, the lack of help, the lies being whispered, the attempt to cover it up while I lay bleeding on the floor. There was no interpretation needed, just truth, and truth, once seen, cannot be erased. When Ethan arrived at the hospital later that night, he didn't speak much. He just walked in with the police officers and handed over everything, the footage, witness statements, and medical reports. My family's version of events collapsed instantly under the weight of evidence. My father was taken into custody first. My mother followed after failing to justify her actions in questioning. My brother tried to deny everything, but the footage showed him clearly slipping my keys away while I was on the floor in pain. And just like that, the story they tried to control became the story that destroyed them. I woke up hours later in a hospital room, weak but alive. The first thing I saw was Ethan sitting beside me, exhausted, holding my hand like he was afraid I would disappear if he let go. When I tried to speak, my voice barely came out, but I asked the only thing that mattered. "The baby!" Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "She's safe," he whispered. "She made it." That was the moment something inside me finally broke in the right way. Not pain, relief. Days passed in recovery, but the outside world moved fast. Legal proceedings began immediately. News of the case spread quickly: family violence, assault during pregnancy, attempted cover-up, all caught on security footage. The story went viral in ways I never expected. People called it a nightmare, a betrayal, a miracle survival story. But for me, it wasn't viral content. It was my life. My father's defense collapsed under evidence. My mother's silence became her confession. My brother lost everything he tried so hard to fake: status, image, respect. The same system they trusted to protect their lies became the system that exposed them completely. And through all of it, Ethan never left my side. One evening, weeks later, I stood in the hospital room holding my newborn daughter. She was small, fragile, but alive, real, breathing, safe. Ethan stood beside me quietly. I looked at her for a long time before speaking. "They tried to end everything that night," I whispered. Ethan nodded. "But they didn't win," he said. I took a deep breath, holding my daughter closer. "No," I said softly. "They didn't." Outside, life had already started moving on. Court dates were scheduled. Consequences were unfolding. But inside that room, none of it mattered anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to survive a family. I was building one.